Hi, so my name's Steph, as we said, and I am also a registered and practicing midwife. And I'll let you.
And my name's Chris, and I'm not a registered practicing midwife. But Steph and I do have something in common.
So both of our children, our firstborn children, unfortunately have died, and my daughter's name is Bea.
And my son's name is Henry.
We're here today from Beyond Bea charity, and we're a fairly new charity. We began in January 2018, so we're just over 2 years old, and we're going to discuss about when choice is taken away and empowering families when facing decisions about baby loss. So in terms of who we are, Beyond Bea are a charity that delivers education throughout the whole of the UK to students and health professionals, and we also raise awareness about baby loss in general to the public, mostly via social media. Our study days are primarily accessible as much as possible to anyone and everyone who has any contact with anyone who experiences baby loss. So, if somebody is experiencing a pregnancy, how many families, how many choices do families actually receive as part of their maternity care? Do you think we have a number? Do you think we've got a bit of an idea of how that might be? Do you think there's so many that we probably have lost count? And I think we can probably all agree there's a lot of choices out there.
But actually, how many choices are families receiving when their baby's died? I think we often see that choice seems to go out the window when parents find themselves in this situation. People stop talking about some of those choices that were available to them before they had this tragic experience, and people start focusing on other things, and choice gets put to one side.
And so we want to think about what choices, and sometimes we lose sight of that because we get so immersed in the areas that we're practicing in, and we're so used to the things that we think we're offering, but actually are we truly offering that? And so we sometimes need to think and remind ourselves about what that choice is. And a choice is the act of choosing between two or more possibilities. And how many circumstances do we think sometimes that actually we're not offering that choice, we're not actually giving them more than one possibility, or we're almost leaning towards one more and making one seem very much less appealing because actually that's either easier for us or it's easier for the person who might be giving in those choices to begin with. And sometimes, obviously, that isn't always in that person's best interest. So I just want to think of a little bit of a scenario for you guys. I imagine most of you are maternity professionals with being here today. So if we've had somebody that's had a normal vaginal delivery and they have had a retained placenta, so they go to theatre. That's a common circumstance for somebody that gets a retained placenta. So they go to theatre to have the removal of that placenta. So they've gone to theatre and their partner has not gone in with them. How many people in here is that normal practice in your trust? The partner doesn't go in. Most people are agreeing with me right now, okay? Is there anyone where they do go into theatre? Okay, we've got 2 hands in the whole room. So we went to 42 different trusts last year, and out of the whole 42, 2 trusts said that was normal practice, that they don't. Two trusts said normal practice that somebody goes in theatre with them, that there is a partner or another family member. And obviously, really, in this circumstance, for instance, it might be a normal delivery, but their baby's died. They've gone into theatre. They don't know anybody in that theatre room. They've been left on their own, they're left vulnerable, they don't know anybody else, and they're going through a procedure like that, which in all is very invasive. They've then had a spinal anaesthetic, which they might not even had before, and they've been left on their own. Why? Is there a reason that we're doing that? Anyone? Anyone think of a categorical reason that we allow that to happen? Because that's what we're doing. We're facilitating that to happen. And a few people have said, well, they might have a general anaesthetic or they might bleed. And so in that circumstance, like in a caesarean section, we get the partner or whoever they're with to leave the room. Or they might say, well, the partner stays with the baby. Well, at a section, the baby would remain in the theatre with the partner or whoever's with them. So how's that any different? Take the baby in as well. And so we can facilitate the fact that they can then make that memory together and she's distracted and she's going to feel less vulnerable. And there's no reason why we should be doing that to them. And that is the most dangerous phrase, because we get so used to doing things because that's the way it's always been, and we're not challenging it because it's just the way we do it. And we need to step away from that.
So if we take another example, people have made a birth plan, everything's great, and they're going to have a water birth, and they've booked the pool room, and then unexpectedly, the day before their baby's due to be born, they find that their baby's died in utero. Are we still offering them the pool room? Is there a reason why you shouldn't have a water birth if your baby's died? But how often are we actually offering that? Or do we disappear down the rabbit hole of the baby's died, and therefore we stop offering those choices? That choice is still there to be made.
And so how can you facilitate choice? Think about the language that you're using. How are you going to talk that to a family about the decisions that they want to make? Are we thinking about repetition? And sometimes that's not even just repeating the things that you've talked about, but even giving them something where you've physically got it written down, they've got it in front of them, and if they've forgotten what you've discussed with them, they can revert back to that written information in another way, because not everyone learns in the same way, not everyone retains information in the same way, so that's how they can take that information back in, and also they can have that discussion with somebody else at a later point. Have compassion and empathy. We've all gone into these careers for a reason, and it's because we care and it's because we're kind. And sometimes we lose sight of that, and sometimes we need to give other people a gentle reminder that that's what we came into this job for. We didn't come in for it for other reasons than that, because that's what the NHS is supposed to be about. That's what maternity care is supposed to be about. So we need to make sure we remind ourselves. Empower them. Give them choice, because by giving them choice, you're giving them something back that they feel has been taken away as it is. And advocate, that's what we are. We're supposed to be the people that advocate for others, and sometimes we lose sight of that. And don't make assumptions. People don't necessarily want the things you want. Give them every aspect of choice that you can possibly give them so that they can make their own decisions. And most importantly, we need to be kind, because that's all it takes. And so these are the choices that are taken away, but we can give them back.
Cutting the cord is a perfectly normal thing to offer dads to do immediately after birth. But actually, I look back on my son's birth, and it was never offered to me. Would it have been offered to me if he'd been alive? Yes, absolutely. It's a perfectly normal part of practice. But again, people are defaulting back to these sorts of things. So there's no reason why dads shouldn't still be offered the opportunity to cut, non-birthing partners shouldn't still be offered the opportunity to cut the cord.
The gender, so not every family knows what they're having, whether it's a boy, if it's a girl. So let them have that opportunity to decide how they want to do that. Do they want to announce it? Do they want you to do that? Do they want the partner to do that? Do they want another birth partner to do that? Give them that choice to do that as well.
Memory boxes are an absolutely essential part of facilitating choice, and there's so many different charities and organisations out there that are providing them. 4 Louis are out there today. Memory boxes are a vital part of moving forward for parents, and they present within themselves a whole load of other choices and a whole other load of other opportunities for those parents. And the memory box is communicating a key message to those parents that they're not alone. So utilising memory boxes is an absolutely essential way of bringing choice back in for parents.
Photographs. So they're not even just making that assumption that we also can get external people in, because it's not their job, it's ours. We can capture those moments that they can't. If we get an external company coming in, perfect. If they're an external charity that come in, perfect. Give them everything we can, but don't assume that just because they're coming in or that they're taking photographs on their phone, that we can't capture those moments. That who's going to be there when they have skin to skin with the baby for the first and potentially the last time? Their baby's not going to get much opportunity to do that again. We can capture that moment. They're not going to be there for every step of the way, so do it for them whilst you can.
3D cast, another thing I look back and I think about how bereavement care has changed over the 5.5 years that I've been on this roller coaster. And 3D casts weren't a thing 5 years ago. Nobody was really doing them, not that I'm aware of. Now they're an absolutely priceless thing for the trusts that are offering them. 3D casts that allow parents to be able to hold their baby's hands and feet are absolutely massive. But a lot of the time they're not being offered because the professionals providing the care don't feel skilled enough or don't feel confident enough in doing them. Find ways to get your skills and your confidence levels up so that the parents aren't missing out as a result.
If you're not already aware, there is a charity named Judas Cloud, and they can help you to facilitate 3D casts in your trust for free. Transportation, it's not something that we necessarily think about or the families might think about when they're home, but the things that I've seen in the times that I've been going around hospitals and universities, and the things that people have told me and the way babies are transported, has not been acceptable in a lot of standards. Wrapped in bubble wrap, put into sports bags. These are things that should not be happening at all, and it's categorically disgusting. Babies deserve the same amount of respect, regardless of whether they're dead or alive, and they deserve that. They're a life, they're a person, and they belong to somebody. They're a daughter, they're a son, and they deserve respect, and we should be thinking about that, whether they're put in a Moses basket or carried in the parents' arms. They should be given a choice about how that happens.
And choice, just to follow up on that, choice is absolutely key, and giving parents the options. This was something that occurred in our experience. I asked how this was going to take place, and I was told, we have a bag. That wasn't acceptable to me. So I found the strength within myself at that moment to push back, but not all parents will. I insisted that my son was transported to the mortuary in a cold cot with the lid on, and that was what I needed. I wasn't going to settle for a bag, but not all parents will find the strength to push back if they're not happy with something. So offer them those choices. Meeting babies, absolutely key. Some parents initially won't want that. They'll find that very difficult to process, the whole situation. Sometimes they just need time, and Steph talked about repetition and how you explain those things and the choice of language. These are the sorts of things that can help us facilitate parents making those right decisions at different points in their experience while they're under your care.
Skin to skin. This was absolutely vital to me. I've been around so many families where their baby's been delivered, and I've helped to facilitate their baby going straight onto the skin, and they've had that overwhelming emotion of having their baby there. And I needed that, whether my daughter was going to be born dead or alive. I needed her to be there because that was the first opportunity and the last opportunity that she would ever be warm. And I needed that for me, and also for others to realise that. And I've took from that to kind of make sure that other people think about that, because after that she was going to be cold and I would never be able to feel a warm on my skin again. I wouldn't get that sensation, and it was the first and last time. So try and think about how you can empower families to get those moments that they might never get again.
Inkless prints were the only real keepsake that we were lucky enough to receive with Henry. Clay imprints and 3D casts, as I said, hadn't really come into the trust that we were in. They're absolutely vital. I have a really big thing about empowering parents to take part in this stuff as well. Inkless prints can then be turned into jewellery or whatever else it might be, but the act of making those memories is just as important.
Clothing. So every baby, regardless of their gestation, is entitled to something that gives them dignity. Whether that baby is 6 weeks gestation to term to a baby that's died because of a neonatal death, they deserve appropriate clothing. So whether that's a small wrap, whether that's a blanket that cradles them, or whether that's a baby grow, they need to have that advocated for them, that they can have something that fits them appropriately. We have lots of resources that we're able to offer, and if anyone's unsure of how to get something appropriate, we can signpost. There's too many to list, but you only have to give us a shout and we'll help you to get that appropriately. Any baby can have that.
Clay imprints, following on inkless prints, anything that involves parents having something that they can hold or touch or feel or look at as the years pass by is absolutely essential. Clay imprints, a lot of trusts are, or historically have been, reluctant about clay imprints because they think it's too difficult to do, or it can't be done below a certain gestation. There are new clays available now which are softer and easier to use for earlier gestations. But giving parents that choice, if you don't think you can get a good print, a good imprint or a good inkless print or a good 3D cast because the baby's only 23 weeks, have that conversation with the parents. The chances are, more often than not, they'll want you to try. And even if it doesn't look perfect, they'll keep it anyway because it's their babies. So offer them that choice, put it back onto them to make that decision.
Cord tie. So it's something that we tend to step away from a long time ago in using other things in a plastic clamp. But it can be something that's very gentle on a baby's skin when they've died, and even when they've not died. I worked in Uganda at one point, and we used the end of our glove to tie off a cord. And if I can use the end of the glove to tie off a cord, you can use a cord tie. It's not a step backwards, and it's a lot nicer, the prettier, you use less plastic, and there's absolutely no need to use a clamp in addition. And it looks a lot nicer for that family, and it's kinder to baby's skin.
Just touched on it before, but this is an absolutely key thing for me, involving parents in memory making. I think for a long time, historically, the mindset was it's better off for you not to see your baby or meet your baby or spend time with your baby. And then that did start to change, and parents were encouraged to spend time with their babies. But I still often found that in a lot of trusts, the standard practice for memory making was midwife would take baby to another room and do the memory making and then come back and give the memories to the parents. And I think we missed something absolutely key at that point. The intangible memory of doing that act with your professional is the memory that will stick in the parents' minds. The imprint or the handprint or the clay or the 3D cast, those are the visual representations of that. But the thing that those parents will reflect on years down the line is if the dad says he wants to do the inkless prints with the midwife and he does a rubbish job, they'll keep that one anyway because he did it. And years down the line, his wife will say to him, do you remember when you did the rubbish handprint and the midwife had to do another one because you screwed it up? And that's their memory. That's the memory. The handprint's just a representation of it. But the intangible act is the thing that really sticks in their minds. That's the thing they're going to remember decades down the line when they're in a nursing home. That's the time they spent with their baby. That's the bit that's priceless. So involve them in it.
Postmortem, it's not something that every family will make a decision about, but it's really important that they're counselled appropriately, and to be told that the outcome of investigations like that can give such significance for future pregnancies, or even just to give them some closure with regards to this pregnancy. But equally, that they might not always get answers, but just to make sure that it's appropriate counselling by somebody who knows what they're discussing, and that they know what it is exactly that happens as part of a postmortem.
And just following up on that, in terms of facilitating those choices for parents with postmortems and making sure that that information is there for them in the future, please make sure that things like placentas, if they need to be sent away, they get sent away. Because all you're actually doing, if that doesn't get sent away or it gets lost or it gets discarded and they can't do the follow-up they need to do, you're potentially taking that choice away from them in the future. Cold cots. Cold cots are an absolute godsend for parents because they give you time. And the one thing that you don't have enough of, if any of, in this situation is time. So anything that can be given to you that will allow you to get more time, an extra day, an extra few hours with your baby because their deterioration has slowed, is absolutely priceless. But again, all of this stuff, we have to be clear about how we're using it. If you provide a family with a cold cot to keep their baby in and you don't plug it in and switch it on, it's not cold. So then actually you're taking that choice away again, unwittingly. So we just need to be really slick with some of this equipment that we've got at our disposal, because it does provide choices and opportunities, but only if it's used right.
A cold cot, just to clarify as well, is the wooden portable unit as opposed to the blue small unit that you might be familiar with. So that can be really useful for those units that haven't got a fridge, for instance, that babies can go into, so that can actually have even longer with the babies. For milk suppression, it's not always a discussion people have. We often prescribe carbergoline, so women's milk suppress, but actually if they want to, they can donate the milk if they choose to, they can express, and women should be empowered to say, you know what, you've got a choice, not here's a tablet, this will get rid of your milk, and then in a few days later they actually regret that decision and they struggle to be able to get milk back, and that's actually what they wanted to do because they didn't know they were allowed to do it. And actually that's a choice, it's not a here's a tablet, off you go. Cuddle cot, so very similar to the cold cot in terms of what it's for, the purpose of it, but it does allow families to be able to use a Moses basket if they want, bring their own Moses basket in and actually have their own surrounding that they're more comfortable in, and it's not always as obvious, and it's very different to the cold cot and more aesthetically pleasing.
Please involve the non-birthing partners. It's absolutely essential. We're all well aware that by definition maternity services fundamentally are about mother and baby first and foremost, and that is only right and proper. And actually in a normal situation, dads and non-birthing partners don't actually have to be a huge part of it. Family can come into hospital or they can be at home or whatever. Mum has baby, everything's fine, everyone goes home and everything's great. In this situation, it's really important that we remember the dad lost his baby as well. And I spent a year, 18 months, constantly fielding the question, how's your wife doing? How's your wife doing? And I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times people actually asked me how I was doing, because we lose sight of that and we think that the mother's lost her baby and the dad's job is to support the mum. It doesn't work like that, so we have to find ways to bring the choices through for the non-birthing partner as well, because otherwise they're just going to sit in a corner feeling completely isolated, and that's no good for their grief, their partner's grief, or their collective grief.
We're here to be able to support everyone who's had any experience in baby loss, and whether you give great support already or not, but it's most important that you do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better, and that's all we want to do. We're not saying anyone's provision is rubbish, we're not saying anyone is bad at care, but if you can learn one more thing from one person, it makes such a difference. And some people will have a bereavement midwife, some places will have training in place, there are different provisions for it, but you can always learn something more, and that's all we want to do. Thank you all very much.